Okay, guys, we're investigating a little bit more with these. So let's walk through these as we have. I'm going to slowly go through it. First thing we have to do, what's in front of x squared? Here's a 1. Okay, so we need to look. What is in front of x squared? What number is in front of x squared? It doesn't appear to be a number there, but in secret, the number 1 is right there. All right, so our first step is I'm going to multiply the very last number times the very first number. And positive 10 times 1 is positive 10. Okay, and that positive means something because we have to go back and think. Can I multiply a positive number and a positive number to get a positive number? Yes is the answer. Although, could I multiply a negative number times a negative number and also get a positive number? And the answer is also yes. Okay, so now I want to talk about this. I know that 1 times 10 gives me 10. Is there something else, 2 other numbers that I can multiply together that give me 10 as well? Right, 2 and 5. Okay, so now I have to think about this. Which of these two numbers, if they were both the same sign, so either both positive or both negative, would then combine together to give me negative 7? Yeah, if I were to combine negative 2 and I were to add it to negative 5, I do indeed get negative 7. So this is what I'm going to plug in. Don't forget these x values. You want these x values to be part of it. Okay, so the next step, I'm going to bring x squared straight down, and I'm going to bring positive 10 straight down. But I'm going to leave a big space. In that space was negative 7x. Now it's going to be these. So I have negative 2x, and it doesn't matter the order you put them in, just as long as you make sure you keep the signs the same. Notice they're both negative in this case. Now I'm going to look, excuse me. I'm going to look, what do I have in common between x squared and x? Yeah, I can factor an x out of both. Okay, if I factor an x out of both, I get x minus 2. This middle subtraction sign, whatever that very middle sign is, will move straight down. That means I'm factoring a negative number out of both. Now I'm going to look here. What number goes into both 5 and 10? Yes, 1 works, but what else works? 5 works. Okay, so I'm going to factor a negative 5 out. So if I factor a negative 5 out, this first section becomes positive x, because negative 5 times x is negative 5x. Then I'm going to factor out a negative 5 out of positive 10. So this sign has to change. This has to be a negative. So think about this. If I go negative 5 times x, I get negative 5x. If I go negative 5 times negative 2, I get positive 10. Those are the same. That's what you want. And no matter what order you'd put these in, whatever you have left over, here's your leftovers, that gets put over here. And the problem's all done. Now, if you had it flip-flopped, you'd have x minus 5 here and x minus 2 here. And that's totally correct. Problem number 2. Notice in front of x squared, we have a 3. So I don't have to put a 1. It's a 3 now. So I'm going to multiply 5 times 3, and I'm going to get positive 15. Again, I'm going to notice that I have a positive sign. Okay, so I could have both positive or both negative. So think about the two numbers that I can multiply together to give me 15. So I have 1 times 15, and I have 3 times 5. Okay, which one of those, when I add them up, gives me positive 16, and what would the signs be? Well, this would work, and they both have to be positive. Okay, because 1 plus 15 is 16. In whatever order I want, I'm going to make sure I put an x with both of those. So I'm going to get 3x squared plus, so we have positive 1x, or I could have put positive 15x first. It doesn't matter. And I have positive 15x, and then that the plus 5 comes down. So remember, the endpoints come down, and they stay as is. All right, so what do I have in common between these two terms? Yeah, I have an x. So if I factor a 3x, or an x out of 3x squared, I'm left with 3x. Plus, if I factor an x out of 1x, I'm left with 1. Okay, remember this middle sign has to come down. What do I have in common between 15x and 5? What number goes into both of them other than 1? 5. Okay, so if I factor a 5 out of 15x, that leaves me 3x, because 5 times 3x is 15x. If I factor a 5 out of 5, I have to have a 1 as a placeholder. These are both the same. So I'm going to bring those straight down, and then whatever I have left are both of those. So I have x plus 5. And we have just factored the problem. Okay, so remember, watch those negative signs, okay? All right, let's try this one. So I don't have a 1 out front, I have a 2. That's great. I'm going to multiply the first and the last together, and that's going to give me positive 20. Okay, so I'm going to list all of the numbers. I'll bring the 2x squared down and the plus 10 down. The ends come down. And let's think about 1 times 20 gives me 20. 2 times 10 also gives me 20. And 4 times 5 gives me 20. All right, in order to get a positive number, they both have to be positive or they both have to be negative. So we're looking at that. We want to know what's going to add up to negative 9. Well, that tells me right away both signs have to be negative. And I'm going to fill our gaps. Whatever order I want, just make sure you bring the signs down. All right. What do I have in common between 2x squared and 4x? Do you agree they both have a 2? Is there anything else I can bring? Yeah, you're going to bring the x down as well. That's going to leave, if I factor a 2x out of 2x squared, which is 2xx, it leaves me an x. If I factor a 2 out of 4, I'm left with minus 2. If I factor the x out, it comes out. Okay, that side's done. Remember, the very middle number comes straight down, so I'm factoring a negative out. So signs are going to change. What do I have in common between 5x and 10? Other than 1. I have 5. So then that's going to give me x. I'm going to change this sign to a negative, because think about this. If I go negative 5 times x, I get negative 5x. If I go negative 5 times negative 2, I get positive 10. Those are the same. Bring them straight down. And then what do you have left? 2x minus 5. That goes in the other parentheses. So if I were to multiply this back together, I'd get my original. Number 4, we get back to, we don't have anything out front, so I'm going to put a 1 out there. Multiply those. Negative 16 times 1 is negative 16. Now let's think about this. In order to get a negative number when we're multiplying, I have to have one positive and one negative. If I have a negative times a negative, that gives me a positive. If I have a positive times a positive, that gives me a positive. But a positive times a negative gives me a negative. So I know that 1 times 16, and I also know 2 times 8, and I know 4 and 4. Okay, which one of those numbers, which one of these works when added together, one being positive, one being negative, that would add up to give me positive 6? And the signs are important. Okay, so think about this. I'm going to say the 2 and the 8 are going to work. So if I had the negative here, that's going to give me positive 6. That's good. If I flip-flopped it, if I did this, I would get negative 6. Well, I want positive 6. So this one's not going to work. So I'm going to make sure I have an x with both of those. And I'm going to bring down the first, the x squared, and bring down the last, the negative 16. And I'm going to fill in the middle these. So I have negative 2x plus 8x. And then I'm going to take a look. Those first two numbers, what do they have in common? Right, they have an x. So if I factor an x out of x squared, I'm left with x. If I factor an x out of minus 2x, that leaves me minus 2. Remember, this middle sign comes down. What can I factor out of both of those? You might be thinking 2, but think a little bit bigger. Now you might be thinking 4. Well, think a little bit bigger. What's the biggest? 8's the biggest. Okay? Because remember, you're trying to get these two to match. Okay, so if I factor an 8 out of 8x, I'm left with x. There's a minus sign because it doesn't change because that was a positive. And then if I factor an 8 out of 16, I get to 2. Now they're the same. So I get x minus 2. Then I get x plus 8 because that's what I have left over. We're all done. All right, 2 more examples. Problem number 5. We have a lead coefficient of a 3. So I'm going to multiply the negative 8 times this 3, and that gives me a negative 24. Remember from the last one, what did we do when we had a negative number? One had to be positive, one had to be negative. We don't know the order yet, but we're going to figure it out. So I know that 24 is 1 times 24. It's also 2 times 12. It's also 3 times 8. It's also 4 times 6. So which one of those, one being positive, one being negative, would add up to that positive 5? Well, that'd be like 23, that'd be 10, that'd be 5, that'd be 2. So this is definitely the ones that work. So I'm going to think about this. If I had a negative 3x and a positive 8x, would those combine together to give me positive 5? If I flip-flopped it, I would get a negative 5. So I got to make sure I make my signs important. So remember, bring the ends down. 3x squared minus 8. And then I'm going to put in whatever order I want. Just make sure the signs come with it. So I can factor a 3 and an x out of both of those. And that's going to leave me x minus 1. And on this one, remember that middle sign comes down, plus. I can factor an 8 out of both of those. That gives me x minus 1. The signs don't change because it was a positive. If it was a negative, the signs change. Okay, those are the same. That's what you want. And then I have those. So 3x plus 8. There's my answer. Last question. Okay, my lead number is 12. So I'm going to multiply 2 times 12. That's going to give me positive 24. And remember, to get a positive number, it's either both positive or both negative. And because that's a negative right there, they're both going to be negative. So think of the factors of 24. So 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, and 4 and 6. Okay, which of those, one being positive or both being negative, would add up to negative 11? Well, this one does go to 11, but if they're both negative, it's negative 13. This is negative 14. This is negative 11. This is negative 10. So this is definitely going to work. So we have that. So that's going to work there. So my two ends come down. I don't touch them. And then I fill in the middle the negative through whatever order I want. Just make sure you keep the signs. So with those, I have a 3 and an x in common. And then if I factor a 3x out of 12x squared, I'm left with 4x. If I factor a 3x out of 3x, I have a placeholder of 1. Middle sign comes down, so I'm factoring a negative out. So what do I have in common between these two? I have a 2. I factor a negative 2 out of negative 8x, I'm left with a positive 4x, because negative 2 times 4x is negative 8x. If I factor a negative 2 from positive 2, I have a placeholder of negative 1. Notice those are the same. They're going to come straight down. Whatever you have left over goes into the other binomial, other set of parentheses. And that's your assignment. So what we're going to work on today is we're going to continue page 49. It says page 49. And we want to make sure we already did 1 through 3 in class. That was yesterday. So I want to make sure that 4 through 12 is all done. Have a great day, everyone. Take care of one another. Bye-bye. Bye.